Hi. Well, how about we get going on this? Huh? Huh? Is that gonna work? Let me turn you down a little bit. We got 5 minutes left. Why not? Hi, friends. So yes, it's time for a bedtime story. I'm gonna come over here so that my cameras are gonna work nice and fine. Get all the nice scenery and stuff. So yes, I'm also gonna turn this down because it's gonna distract the hell out of me. Yes. Hi. Welcome to Johnny Nero's Bedtime Stories. Tonight, we are going to continue reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. We are starting in Chapter 8 of the night. Yeah, we're bringing this back. I was hoping I was maybe going to be able to do this when I was over on the East Coast a couple weeks ago, but it didn't quite work out that way. So, we're doing it this way. That's how this goes. So, yeah. If you like this, you want to listen to some cool music, go ahead and give me a follow here, or follow me on Facebook, Forces Guide me on YouTube, all of the good stuff. Anyway, please enjoy this reading, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Chapter 8. Mobilis and Mobili. This forcible abduction, so roughly carried out, was accomplished with the rapidity of lightning. I shivered all over. Whom had we to deal with? No doubt some new sort of pirates who explored the sea in their own way. Checking my levels. Alright, cool. Hardly had the narrow panel closed upon me when I was enveloped in darkness. My eyes, dazzled with the outer light, could distinguish nothing. I felt my naked feet cling to the rings of an iron ladder. Ned Land and Consul, firmly seized, followed me. At the bottom of the ladder, a door opened and shut after us immediately with a bang. Let's readjust some things over here. Okay, fine. You aren't going to adjust that way. Fine. Cool. So I will just do it this way. We were alone. Where? I could not say. Hardly imagine. All was black, and such dense black that after some minutes my eyes had not been able to discern even the faintest glimmer. Meanwhile, Ned Land, furious at these proceedings, gave free vent to his indignation. "Confound it!" cried he. "Here are people who come up to the Scotch for hospitality. They only just miss being cannibals." Ooh, that seemed kind of offensive. I'm sorry if that was. "I should not be surprised at it, but I declare that they shall not eat me without my protesting." Good job. Calm yourself, friend Ned. Calm yourself, replied Consul quietly. Do not cry out before you are hurt. We are not quite done for yet. Not quite, sharply replied the Canadian, but pretty near at all events. Things look black. Happily, my bowie knife I have still, and I can always see well enough to use it. The first of these pirates who lays a hand on me... Do not excite yourself, Ned, I said to the harpooner, and do not compromise us by useless violence. Who knows that they will not listen to us? Let us rather try to find out where we are. I groped about. In 5 steps, I came to an iron wall made of plates bolted together. Then, turning back, I struck against a wooden table, near which were arranged several tools. The boards of this prison were concealed under a thick mat of formium. Which deadened the noise of the feet. The bare walls receive... Sorry, everything's falling off of my desk tonight. I am not doing a good job reading this stuff. Alright, let me repeat that paragraph. Okay. I groped about. In 5 steps, I came to an iron wall made of plates bolted together. Then, turning back, I struck against a wooden table, near which were ranged several tools. The boards of this prison were concealed under a thick mat of phorium, which deadened the noise of the feet. The bare walls revealed no trace of window or door. Counsel, going round the reverse way, met me, and we went back to the middle of the cabin, which measured about 20 feet by 10. As to its height, Ned Land, in spite of his own great height, could not measure it. Half an hour had already passed without our situation being bettered, when the dense darkness suddenly gave way to extreme light. Our prison was suddenly lighted, that is to say, it became filled with a luminous matter so strong that I could not bear it at first. In its whiteness and intensity, I recognized the electric light which played around the submarine boat like a magnificent phenomenon of phosphorescence. After shutting my eyes involuntarily, I opened them and saw that this luminous agent came from a half-globe, unpolished, placed in the roof of the cabin. "At last one can see," cried Ned Land, who, knife in hand, stood on the defensive. "Yes," said I, "but we are still in the dark about ourselves." "Let master have patience," said the imperturbable counsel. The sudden lighting of the cabin enabled me to examine it minutely. It contained only a table and 5 stools. The invisible door might be hermetically sealed. No noise was heard. All seemed dead in the interior of this boat. Did it move? Did it float on the surface of the ocean, or did it dive into its depths? I could not guess. A noise of bolts was now heard. The door opened, and 2 men appeared. One was short, very muscular, broad-shouldered with robust limbs, strong head, an abundance of black hair, thick mustache, a quick penetrating look, and the vivacity which characterizes the population of southern France. The second stranger merits a more detailed description. A disciple of Gratiolet or Engel would have read his face like an open book. I made out his prevailing qualities directly. Self-confidence, because his head was well set on his shoulders, and his black eyes looked around with cold assurance. Calmness, for his skin, rather pale, showed his coolness of blood. Energy, evinced by the rapid contraction of his lofty brows, and courage, because his deep breathing denoted great power of lungs. That denotes courage? There? Whether this person was 35 or 50 years of age, I could not say. He was tall, had a large forehead, straight nose, a clearly cut mouth, beautiful teeth, with fine taper hands, indicative of a highly nervous temperament. This man was certainly... God. Oh, son of a... Okay. I lost my page during all of that. Tall, large forehead. This man was certainly the most admirable specimen I had ever met. One particular feature was his eyes, rather far from each other, and which could take in nearly a quarter of the horizon at once. This faculty, I verified later, gave him a range of vision far superior to Ned Land's. When this stranger fixed upon an object, his eyebrows met. His large eyelids closed around so as to contract the range of his vision, and he looked as if he magnified the object's lesson by distance. As if he pierced those sheets of water so opaque to our eyes, and as if he read the very depths of the seas. The two strangers, with caps made from the fur of the sea otter and shod with sea boots of seal's skin, were dressed in clothes of a particular texture, which allowed free movement of the limbs. The taller of the two, evidently the chief on board, examined us with great attention, without saying a word. Then, turning to his companion, talked with him in an unknown tongue. It was a sonorous, harmonious, and flexible dialect, the vowels seeming to emit a very varied accentuation. The other replied by a shake of the head, and added 2 or 3 perfectly incomprehensible words. Then he seemed to question me by a look. I replied in good French that I did not know his language, but he seemed not to understand me, and my situation became more embarrassing. If Master were to tell our story, said Counsel, perhaps these gentlemen may understand some words. I began to tell our adventures, articulating each syllable clearly and without omitting one single detail. I announced our names and rank, introducing in person Professor Almanax, his servant Counsel, and Master Ned Land, the harpooner. The man with the soft, calm eyes listened to me quietly, even politely, and with extreme attention. But nothing in his countenance indicated that he had understood my story. When I finished, he said not a word. There remained one resource: to speak English. Perhaps they would know this most universal language. Perhaps they would know this almost universal language. Fucking colonizers. I knew it as well as the German language, well enough to read it fluently, but not to speak it correctly. But anyhow, we must make ourselves understood. Go on in your turn, I said to the harpooner. Speak your best Anglo-Saxon and try to do better than I. Ned did not beg off and recommenced our story. To his great disgust, the harpooner did not seem to have made himself more intelligible than I had. Our visitors did not stir. They evidently understood neither the language of Arago nor of Faraday. So, neither English nor science. This is essentially what's being said here. Faraday. Very much embarrassed after having vainly exhausted our philological resources, I knew not what part to take. When Counsel said, if Master will permit me, I will relate it in German. But in spite of the elegant turns and good accent of the narrator, the German language had no success. At last, nonplussed, I tried to remember my first lessons and to narrate our adventures in Latin, but with no better success. This last attempt being of no avail, the two strangers exchanged some words in their unknown language and retired. The door shut. It is an infamous shame, cried Ned Land, who broke out for the 20th time. We speak to those rogues in French, English, German, and Latin, and none of them has the politeness to answer. Calm yourself, I said to the impetuous Ned. Anger will do no good. But do you see, Professor, replied our irascible companion, that we shall absolutely die of hunger in this iron cage? Bah, said Counsel philosophically. We can hold out some time yet. Bah! Oh, sorry. I just said that paragraph. My friends, I said, we must not despair. We have been worse off than this. Do me the favor to wait a little before forming an opinion upon the commander and crew of this boat. My opinion is formed, replied Ned Land sharply. They are rascals. Good, and from what country? From the land of rogues. My brave Ned, that country is not clearly indicated on the map of the world. But I admit that the nationality of the two strangers is hard to determine. Neither English, French, nor German. That is quite certain. However, I am inclined to think that the commander and his companion were born in low latitudes. There was southern blood in them. But I cannot decide by their appearance whether they are Spaniards, Turks, Arabians, or Indians. As to their language, it is quite incomprehensible. There is the disadvantage of not knowing all languages, said Counsel. or the disadvantage of not having one universal language. As he said these words, the door opened. A steward entered. He brought us clothes, coats, and trousers, made of a stuff I did not know. I hastened to dress myself, and my companions followed my example. During that time, the steward, dumb, perhaps deaf, had arranged the table and laid 3 plates. "This is something like," said Counsel. "Bah!" said the rancorous harpooner. "What do you suppose they eat here? Tortoise liver? Filleted shark? And beefsteaks from sea dogs?" "We shall see," said Counsel. The dishes of bell metal were placed on the table, and we took our places. Undoubtedly, we had to do with civilized people, and had it not been for the electric light which flooded us, I could have fancied I was in the dining room of the Adelphi Hotel in Liverpool, or at the Grand Hotel in Paris. I must say, however, that there was neither bread nor wine. The water was fresh and clear, but it was water, and did not suit Ned Land's taste. Trying to make everything work. Yeah. And did not suit Ned Land's taste. Among the dishes which were brought to us, I recognized several fish delicately dressed, but of some, although excellent, I could give no opinion. Neither could I tell to what kingdom they belonged, whether animal or vegetable. As to the dinner service, it was elegant and in perfect taste. Each utensil, spoon, fork, knife, plate had a letter engraved upon it, with a motto above it, of which this is an exact facsimile. Mobilis immobili. N. The letter N was no doubt the initial of the name of the enigmatical person who commanded at the bottom of the seas. Ned and Counsel did not reflect much. They devoured the food, and I did likewise. I was, besides, reassured as to our fate, and it seemed evident that our hosts would not let us die of want. However, everything has an end. Everything passes away. Even the hunger of people who have not eaten for 15 hours. Our appetites satisfied, we felt overcome with sleep. "Faith, I shall sleep well," said Counsel. "So shall I," replied Ned Land. My 2 companions stretched themselves on the cabin carpet, and we soon sound asleep. For my own part, too many thoughts crowded my brain. Too many insoluble questions pressed upon me. Too many fancies kept my eyes half open. Where were we? What strange power carried us on? I felt, or rather fancied I felt, the machine sinking down to the lowest beds of the sea. Dreadful nightmares beset me. I saw in these mysterious asylums a world of unknown animals, among which the submarine boat seemed to be of the same kind, living, moving, and formidable as they. Then my brain grew calmer. My imagination wandered into vague unconsciousness. I soon fell into a deep sleep. They're now sleeping on the boat. Chapter 9. Ned Land's Tempers. How long we slept, I do not know. But our sleep must have lasted long, for it rested us completely from our fatigues. I woke first. My companions had not moved and were still stretched in their corner. Hardly roused from my somewhat hard couch, I felt my brain freed, my mind clear. I then began an attentive examination of our cell. Nothing was changed inside. The prison was still a prison. The prisoners. However, the steward, during our sleep, had cleared the table. I breathed with difficulty. The heavy air seemed to oppress my lungs. Although the cell was large, we had evidently consumed a great part of the oxygen that it contained. Indeed, each man consumes in 1 hour the oxygen contained in more than 176 pints of air, and this air, charged as then, with a nearly equal quantity of carbonic acid, becomes unbreathable. It became necessary to renew the atmosphere of our prison, and no doubt the hole in the submarine boat. That gave rise to a question in my mind. How would the commander of this floating dwelling place proceed? Would he obtain air by chemical means and getting by heat the oxygen contained in chlorate of potash and in absorbing carbonic acid by caustic potash? Or a more convenient, economical, and consequently more probable alternative, would he be satisfied to rise and take breath at the surface of the water, like a cetacean, and so renew for 24 hours the atmospheric provision? In fact, I was already obliged to increase my respirations to eke out of this cell the little oxygen it contained, when suddenly I was refreshed by a current of pure air and perfumed with saline emanations. It was an invigorating sea breeze charged with iodine. I opened my mouth wide and my lungs saturated themselves with fresh particles. At the same time, I felt the boat rolling. The iron-plated monster had evidently just risen to the surface of the ocean to breathe after the fashion of whales. I found out from that the mode of ventilating the boat. When I had inhaled this air freely, I sought the conduit pipe which conveyed to us the beneficial whiff, and I was not long in finding it. Above the door was a ventilator, though which volumes of fresh air renewed the impoverished atmosphere of the cell. I was making my observations when Ned and Council awoke almost at the same time, under the influence of this reviving air. They rubbed their eyes, stretched themselves, and were on their feet in an instant. Did Master sleep well? Said Council with his usual politeness. Very well, my brave boy. And you, Mr. Land? Soundly, Professor, but I don't know if I am right or not. There seems to be a sea breeze. A seaman could not be mistaken. And I told the Canadian all that had passed during his sleep. Good, said he. That accounts for those roarings we heard when the supposed narwhal sighted the Abraham Lincoln. Quite so, Mr. Land. It was taking breath. Only, Mr. Onyx, I have no idea what o'clock it is unless it is dinner time. Dinner time, my good fellow? Say, rather breakfast time, for we certainly have begun another day. So, said Council, we have slept 24 hours? That is my opinion. I will not contradict you, replied Ned Land. But dinner or breakfast, the steward will be welcome, whichever he brings. Mr. Land, we must conform to the rules on board, and I suppose our appetites are in advance of the dinner. Oh, ha 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 ha. This is not something that people tell me who's talking. Mr. Land, we must conform to the rules on board, and I suppose our appetites are in advance of the dinner hour. That is just like you, friend Council, said Ned impatiently. You are never out of temper, always calm. You would return thanks before grace, and die of hunger rather than complain. Time was getting on, and we were fearfully hungry. And this time the steward did not appear. It was rather too long to leave us if they really had good intentions towards us. Ned Land, tormented by the cravings of hunger, got still more angry, and notwithstanding his promise, I dreaded an explosion which he found himself with one of the crew. I dreaded an explosion when he found himself with one of the crew, is what I meant to say at that point in time. For 2 hours more, Ned Land's temper increased. He cried, he shouted, but in vain. The walls were deaf. There was no sound to be heard in the boat. All was still as death. It did not move, for I should have felt the trembling motion of the hull under the influence of the crew. Plunged in the depths of the waters, it belonged no longer to earth. The silence was dreadful. I felt terrified. Council was calm. Ned Land roared. Just then a noise was heard outside. Steps sounded on the metal flags. The locks were turned, the door opened, and the steward appeared. Before I could rush forward to stop him, the Canadian had thrown him down and held him by the throat. The steward was choking under the grip of his powerful hand. Consul was already trying to unclasp the harpooner's hand from the half-suffocated victim, and I was going to fly to the rescue when suddenly I was nailed to the spot by hearing these words in French. "Be quiet, Mr. Land, and you, Professor. Will you be so good as to listen?" Got a message for things that are happening soon. Anywho, do we finally get to meet Nemo? Let's find out. Where are you? There you are. Chapter 10. The Man of the Seas. It was the commander of the vessel who thus spoke. At these words, Ned Land rose suddenly. The steward, nearly strangled, tottered out on a sign from his mister. But such was the power of the commander on board, that not a gesture betrayed the resentment which this man must have felt towards the Canadian. Counsel interested in spite of himself. I, stupefied, awaited in silence the result of this scene. The commander, leaning against a corner of the table with his arms folded, scanned us with profound attention. Did he hesitate to speak? Did he regret the words which he had just spoken in French? One might almost think so. After some moments of silence, which not one of us dreamed of breaking, "Gentlemen," said he in a calm and penetrating voice, "I speak French, English, German, and Latin equally well. I could, therefore, have answered you at our first interview, but I wished to know you first, then to reflect. The story told by each one, entirely agreeing in the main points, convinced me of your identity. I know now that chance has brought before me Monsieur Pierre Arnax, professor of natural history of the Museum of Paris, entrusted with a scientific mission abroad. Consul, his servant, and Ned Land, of Canadian origin, harpooner on board the frigate Abraham Lincoln of the Navy of the United States of America." I bowed assent. It was not a question that the commander put to me, therefore was no answer to be made. This man expressed himself with perfect ease without any accent. His sentences were well turned, his words clear, and his fluency of speech remarkable. Yet I did not recognize in him a fellow countryman. He continued the conversation in these terms. "You have doubtless thought, sir, that I have delayed long in paying you this second visit. The reason is that, your identity recognized, I wish to weigh maturely what part to act towards you. I have hesitated much. Most annoying circumstances have brought you into the presence of a man who has broken all the ties of humanity. You have come to trouble my existence." "Unintentionally," said I. "Unintentionally?" replied the stranger, raising his voice a little. "Was it unintentionally that the Abraham Lincoln pursued me all over the seas? Was it unintentionally that you took passage in this frigate? Was it unintentionally that your cannonballs rebounded off the plating of my vessel? Was it unintentionally that Mr. Ned Land struck me with his harpoon?" I detected a restrained irritation in these words. But to these recriminations, I had a very natural answer to make, and I made it. Sir, said I, no doubt you are ignorant of the discussions which have taken place concerning you in America and Europe. You do not know that divers accidents caused by collisions with your submarine machine have excited public feeling in the 2 continents. I omit the hypothesis without number by which it was sought to explain the inexplicable phenomenon of which you alone possess the secret. But you must understand that, in pursuing you over the high seas of the Pacific, the Abraham Lincoln believed itself to be chasing some powerful sea monster, of which it was necessary to rid the ocean of at any price. A half smile curled the lips of the commander. Then in a calmer tone, Monsieur Aronnax, he replied, dare you affirm that your frigate would not as soon have pursued and cannonaded a submarine boat as a monster? This question embarrassed me, for certainly Captain Farragut might not have hesitated. He might have thought it his duty to destroy a contrivance of this kind, as he would a gigantic narwhal. You understand then, sir, continued the stranger, that I have the right to treat you as enemies. I answered nothing purposely. For what good would it be to discuss such a proposition when force could destroy the best arguments? I have hesitated for some time, continued the commander. Nothing obliged me to show you hospitality. If I chose to separate myself from you, I should have no interest in seeing you again. I could place you upon the deck of this vessel, which has served you as a refuge. I could sink beneath the waters and forget that you had ever existed. Would not that be my right? It might be the right of a savage, I answered, but not that of a civilized man. Professor, replied the commander. Quickly, I am not what you call a civilized man. I have done with society entirely, for reasons which I alone have the right of appreciating. I do not, therefore, obey its laws, and I desire you never to allude to them before me again. This was said plainly. A flash of anger and disdain kindled in the eyes of the unknown, and I had a glimpse of a terrible past in the life of this man. Not only had he put himself beyond the pale of human laws, but he had made himself independent of them, free in the strictest acceptation of the word, quite beyond their reach. Who, then, would dare pursue him at the bottom of the sea when, on its surface, he defied all attempts made against him? What vessel could resist the shock of his submarine monitor? What cuirass, however thick, could withstand the blows of his spur? No man could demand from him an account of his actions. God, if he believed in one, his conscience, if he had one, were the sole judges to whom he was answerable. Answerable. Words like that are hard. Words are hard. These reflections crossed my mind rapidly, while the stranger personage was silent, absorbed, and as if wrapped up in himself. I regarded him with fear mingled with interest, as doubtless Oedipus regarded the Sphinx. After a rather long silence, the commander resumed the conversation. I have hesitated, said he, but I have thought that my interest might be reconciled with that pity to which every human being has a right. You will remain on board my vessel, since fate has cast you there. You will be free, and in exchange for this liberty, I shall only impose one single condition. Your word of honor to submit to it will suffice. Speak, sir. I suppose the condition is one which a man of honor may accept? Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir, it is this. It is possible that certain events, unforeseen, may oblige me to consign you to your cabins for some hours or some days, as the case may be. As I desire never to use violence, I expect from you, more than all the others, a passive obedience. In thus acting, I take all the responsibility. I acquit you entirely, for I make it an impossibility for you to see what ought not to be seen. Do you accept this condition? Then things took place on board which, to say the least, were singular, and which ought not to be seen by people who were not placed beyond the pale of social laws. Among the surprises which the future was preparing for me, this might not be the least. We accept, I answered. Only I will ask your permission, sir, to address one question to you. One only. Speak, sir. You said that we should be free on board. Entirely. I ask you, then, what you mean by this liberty. Just the liberty to go, to come, to see, to observe, even all that passes here, save under rare circumstances. The liberty, in short, which we enjoy ourselves, my companions and I. It was evident that we did not understand one another. Pardon me, sir, I resumed, but this liberty is only what every prisoner has of pacing his prison. It cannot suffice us. It must suffice you, however. What? We must renounce forever seeing our country, our friends, our relations again? Yes, sir, but to renounce that unendurable worldly yoke which men believe to be liberty is not perhaps so painful as you think. Well, exclaimed Ned Land, never will I give up my word of honor not to try to escape. I did not ask your word of honor, Mr. Land, answered the commander coldly. Sir, I replied, beginning to get angry in spite of myself, you abuse your situation towards us. It is cruelty. No, sir, it is clemency. You are my prisoners of war. I keep you, when I could, by a word, plunge you into the depths of the ocean. You attacked me. You came to surprise a secret which no man in the world must penetrate, the secret of my whole existence. And you think that I am going to send you back to that world which must know me no more? Never. In retaining you, it is not you whom I guard, it is myself. These words indicated a resolution taken on the part of the commander, against which no arguments would prevail. So, sir, I replied, you give us simply the choice between life and death? Simply. My friends, said I, to a question thus put, there is nothing to answer, but no word of honor binds us to the master of this vessel. None, sir, answered the unknown. Then in a gentle tone he continued, now, permit me to finish what I have to say to you. I know you, Monsieur Anorax. You and your companions will not, perhaps, have so much to complain of in the chance which has bound you to my fate. You will find among the books which are my favorite study the work which you have published on the depths of the sea. I have often read it. You have carried your work as far as terrestrial science permitted you, but you do not know all. You have not seen all. Let me tell you then, Professor, that you will not regret the time passed on board my vessel. You are going to visit the land of marvels. These words of the commander had a great effect upon me. I cannot deny it. My weak point was touched, and I forgot for a moment that the contemplation of these sublime subjects was not worth the loss of liberty. Besides, I trusted to the future to decide this grave question. So I contented myself with saying, by what name ought I to address you? Sir, replied the commander, I am nothing to you but Captain Nemo. And you and your companions are nothing to me but the passengers of the Nautilus. Captain Nemo called. A steward appeared. The captain gave him his orders in that strange language which I did not understand. Then, turning towards the Canadian in council, "A repast awaits you in your cabin," said he. "Be so good as to follow this man. And now, Monsieur Rene, our breakfast is ready. Permit me to lead the way." "I am at your service, Captain." "Hey! Thank you for the raid, Nifty Chris. Yes, it is story time. We are in the middle of Chapter 10, The Man Under the Seas of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Thank you so much for the raid, Chris. Appreciate it. Those of you who are raiding, please refresh and stick around. I'll finish telling the bedtime story for the next 20 minutes or so, but I'm here every Tuesday. I do music and chip tunes and stuff, and then at the end of the night, I read you a bedtime story for about an hour. So that's what we're doing. Oh, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I wanted to try and do something that maybe in the future I can easily stream more with. So it's like the music streams are a lot of work, takes up a lot of time, takes up a lot of preparation. This is literally turn on my lights, grab my book, turn on my camera, I'm good to go. So I was trying to figure out a way that I could get more views out there, but yeah, thank you. No. Trying to clear that out. There we go. Thank you so much for the raid, Chris. All right, where were we? Where's the commander had a great effect? Here we go. These words of the commander had a great effect upon me. I cannot deny it. My weak point was well, I already said read that one. Where am I at now? You distracted me, Chris. All right. Repass freedom, said he. Permit me to lead the way. I am at your service, Captain. I followed Captain Nemo, and as soon as I had passed through the door, I found myself in a kind of passage lighted by electricity, similar to the waist of a ship. After we had proceeded a dozen yards, a second door opened before me. I then entered a dining room, decorated and furnished in severe taste. High oaken sideboards, inlaid with ebony, stood at the two extremities of the room, and upon their shelves glittered china, porcelain, and glass of inestimable value. The plate on the table sparkled in the rays which the luminous ceiling shed around, while the light was tempered and softened by exquisite paintings. In the center of the room was a table richly laid out. Let me read that again. In the center of the room was a table richly laid out. Captain Nemo indicated the place I was to occupy. The breakfast consisted of a certain number of dishes, the contents of which were furnished by the sea alone, and I was ignorant of the nature and mode of preparation of some of them. I acknowledged that they were good, but they had a peculiarly... I cannot say this word. They had a peculiar flavor, which I easily became accustomed to. These different elements appeared to me to be rich in phosphorus, and I thought they must have a marine origin. Not sure how that works, but maybe that does work. Who knows? All right. Captain Nemo looked at me. I asked him no questions, but he guessed my thoughts and answered of his own accord the questions which I was burning to address to him. The greater part of these dishes are unknown to you, he said to me. However, you may partake of them without fear. They are wholesome and nourishing. For a long time I have renounced the food of the earth, and I am never ill now, for my crew, who are healthy, are fed on the same food. So, said I, all these eatables are the produce of the sea? Yes, Professor. The sea supplies all my wants. Sometimes I cast my nets in tow, and I draw them in ready to break. Sometimes I hunt in the midst of this element, which appears to be inaccessible to man, and quarry the game which dwells in my submarine forests. My flocks, like those of Neptune's old shepherds, graze fearlessly in the immense prairies of the ocean. I have a vast property there, which I cultivate myself, and which is always sown by the hand of the Creator of all things. I can understand perfectly, sir, that your nets furnish excellent fish for your table. I can understand also that you hunt aquatic game in your submarine forests. But I cannot understand at all how a particle of meat, no matter how small, can figure in your bill of fare. This, which you believe to be meat, Professor, is nothing else than fillet of turtle. There are also some dolphin's livers, which you take to be a ragout of pork. My cook is a clever fellow who excels in dressing these various products of the ocean. Taste all these dishes. Here is a preserve of holothuria, which a Malay would declare to be unrivaled in the world. Here is a cream of which the milk has been furnished by the cetacea, and the sugar by the great fucus of the North Sea. And lastly, permit me to offer you some preserve of anemones, which is equal to that of the most delicious fruits. I tasted more from curiosity than as a connoisseur, while Captain Nemo enchanted me with his extraordinary stories. You like the sea, Captain? Yes, I love it. The sea is everything. It covers 7/10 of the terrestrial globe. Its breath is pure and healthy. It is an immense desert where man is never lonely, for he feels life stirring on all sides. The sea is only the embodiment of a supernatural and wonderful existence. It is nothing but love and emotion. It is the living infinite, as one of your poets has said. In fact, Professor, nature manifests herself in it by her three kingdoms: mineral, vegetable, and animal. The sea is the vast reservoir of nature. The globe began with sea, so to speak, and who knows if it will not end with it. In it is supreme tranquility. The sea does not belong to despots. Upon its surface, men can still exercise unjust laws, fight, tear one another to pieces, and be carried away with terrestrial horrors. But at 30 feet below its level, their reign ceases. Their influence is quenched, and their power disappears. Ah, sir. Live in the bosom of the waters. There only is independence. There I recognize no masters. There I am free. Captain Nemo suddenly became silent in the midst of his enthusiasm, by which he was quite carried away. For a few moments he paced up and down, much agitated. Then he became more calm, regained his accustomed coldness of expression, and turning towards me. "Now, Professor," said he, "if you wish to go over the Nautilus, I am at your service." Captain Nemo rose. I followed him. A double door contrived at the back of the dining room. Opened, and I entered a room equal in dimensions to that which I had just quitted. It was a library. High pieces of furniture of black-violet ebony inlaid with brass supported upon their wide shelves a great number of books uniformly bound. They followed the shape of the room, terminating at the lower part in huge divans, covered with brown leather which were curved to afford the greatest comfort. Light movable desks, made to slide in and out at will, allowed one to rest one book while reading in the center. That's a period at the end of that sentence. In the center stood an immense table, covered with pamphlets, among which were some newspapers, already of old date. The electric light flooded everything. It was shed from 4 unpolished globes, half sunk in the volutes of the ceiling. I looked with real admiration at this room, so ingeniously fitted up, and I could scarcely believe my eyes. "Captain Nemo," said I to my host, who had just thrown himself in one of the divans, "this is a library which would do honor to more than one of the continental palaces, and I am absolutely astounded when I consider that it can follow you to the bottom of the seas. Where could one find greater solitude or silence, Professor?" replied Captain Nemo. Did your study in the museum afford you such perfect quiet? No, sir, and I must confess that it is a very poor one after yours. You must have 6,000 or 7,000 volumes here. 12,000 is your next. There are the only ties which bind me to the earth. But I had done with the world on a day when my Nautilus plunged for the first time beneath the waters. That day I bought my last volumes, my last pamphlets, my last papers, and from that time I wish to think that men no longer think or write. These books, Professor, are at your service besides, and you can make use of them freely. I thanked Captain Nemo and went up to the shelves of the library. Works on science, morals, and literature abounded in every language, but I did not see one single work on political economy. That subject appeared to be strictly prescribed. Excuse me. Strange to say, all these books were irregularly arranged, in whatsoever language they were written, and this medley proved that the captain of the Nautilus must have read indiscriminately the books which he took up by chance. Sir, said I to the captain, I thank you for having placed this library at my disposal. It contains treasures of science, and I shall profit by them. This room is not only a library, said Captain Nemo. It is also a smoking room. A smoking room? I cried. Then one may smoke on board? Certainly. Then, sir, I am forced to believe that you have kept up a communication with Havana. Not any, answered the captain. Except this cigar, Monsieur Arne. And though it does not come from Havana, you will be pleased with it, if you are a connoisseur. I took the cigar which was offered me. Its shape recalled the London ones, but it seemed to be made of leaves of gold. I lighted it at a little brazier, which was supported upon an elegant bronze stem, and drew the first whiffs with the delight of a lover of smoking who has not smoked for 2 days. It is excellent, said I, but it is not tobacco. No, answered the captain. This tobacco comes neither from Havana nor from the East. It is a kind of seaweed, rich in nicotine, with which the sea provides me, but somewhat sparingly. It was a vast four-sided room, 30 feet long, 18 wide, and 15 high. A luminous ceiling decorated with light arabesques shed a soft, clear light over all the marvels accumulated in this museum. For it was in fact a museum, in which an intelligent and prodigal hand had gathered all the treasures of nature and art, with the artistic confusion which distinguishes a painter's studio. 30 first-rate pictures, uniformly framed, separated by bright drapery, ornamented the walls, which were hung with the tapestry of severe design. I saw works of great value, the greater part of which I admired in the special collections of Europe, and in the exhibitions of paintings. Several schools of the old masters were represented by a Madonna of Raphael, a Virgin of Leonardo da Vinci, a nymph of Correggio, a woman of Titian, an Adoration of Veronese, an Assumption of Murillo, a portrait of Holbein, a monk of Velázquez, a martyr of Ribera, a fair of Rubens, 2 Flemish landscapes of Teniers, 3 little genre pictures of Gerard Dow, Metsu, and Paul Potter, 2 specimens of Géricault and Proudhon, and some sea pieces of Bakhuyzen and Vernet. Among the works of modern painters were pictures of the signatures of Delacroix, Ingres, Decamps, Troyon, Mizionaire, Daubigny, etc. I probably did not pronounce any of those names correctly. and some admirable statues in marble and bronze after the finest antique models stood upon pedestals in the corners of this magnificent museum. Amazement, as the captain of the Nautilus had predicted, had already begun to take possession of me. "Professor," said the strange man, "you must excuse the unceremonious way in which I receive you and the disorder of this room." "Sir," I answered, "without seeking to know who you are, I recognize you, an artist." "An amateur, nothing more, sir. Formerly, I loved to collect these beautiful works created by the hand of man. I sought them greedily and ferreted them out indefatigably, and I have been able to bring together some objects of great value. These are my last souvenirs of that world which is dead to me. In my eyes, your modern artists are already old. They have 2,000 or 3,000 years of existence. I confound them in my own mind. Masters have no age." "And these musicians?" said I, pointing out some works of Weber, Rossini, Mozart, Beethoven, Haydn, Meyerbeer, Harold, Wagner, Auber, Gounod, and a number of others scattered over a large model piano organ which occupied one of the panels of the drawing room. "These musicians," replied Captain Nemo, "are the contemporaries of Orpheus. For in the memory of the dead, all chronological differences are effaced, and I am dead, Professor. As much dead as those of your friends who are sleeping 6 feet under the earth." Captain Nemo was silent and seemed lost in a profound reverie. I contemplated him with deep interest, analyzing in silence the strange expression of his countenance. Leaning on his elbow against an angle of a costly mosaic table, he no longer saw me. He had forgotten my presence. "You are lost and you're in need of some advice." I did not disturb this reverie, and continued my observation of the curiosities which enriched this drawing room. Under elegant glass cases fixed by copper rivets were classed and labeled the most precious productions of the sea which had ever been presented to the eye of a naturalist. My delight as a professor may have been conceived. The division containing the zoophytes presented the most curious specimens of the two groups of polypi and echinodermes. In the first group, the tubipores, were gorgons arranged like a fan, soft sponges of Syria, nizes of Moluccas, penitals, an admirable Vigularia of the Norwegian seas, variegated umbellularii, I apologize for the pacing of this, Alcyanoarii, a whole series of madrepores, which my master Mill Edwards has so cleverly classified, among which I remarked some wonderful flabellinae, oculinae of the island of Bourbon, the Neptune's car of the Antilles, superb varieties of corals, in short, every species of those curious polypi, of which entire islands are formed, which one day become continents. The end of the echinodermes are remarkable for their coating of spines, asteri, sea stars, pantocrinae, comatules, asterophones, echini, holothuri, etc., represented individually a complete collection of this group. So a lot of fish and coral. That's what's happening there, in case you didn't follow along. Somewhat nervous conciliologist would certainly have fainted before other more numerous cases in which were classified the specimens of mollusks. It was a collection of inestimable value, which time fails me to describe minutely. Among these specimens, I will quote from memory only the elegant royal hammerfish of the Indian Ocean, whose regular white spots stood out brightly on a red and brown ground, an imperial spondyle, bright colored, bristling with spines, a rare specimen in the European museums. I estimated its value at not less than 1,000 pounds. A common hammerfish of the seas of New Holland, which is only procured with difficulty. Exotic Bucardia of Senegal. Fragile white bivalve shells, which a breath might shatter like a soap bubble. Several varieties of the Asbilgilim of Java, a kind of calcareous tube, edged with leafy folds and much debated by amateurs. A whole series of trochee, some a greenish yellow, found in the American seas. Others are reddish-brown, natives of Australian waters. Others from the Gulf of Mexico, remarkable for their imbricated shell. Stellari found in the southern seas. And last, the rarest of all, the magnificent spur of New Zealand. And every description of delicate and fragile shells to which science has given appropriate names. Apart, in separate compartments, were spread out chaplets of pearls of the greatest beauty, which reflected the electric light in little sparks of fire. Pink pearls, torn from the pinna marina of the Red Sea, green pearls of the haliotide iris, yellow, blue, and black pearls, the curious productions of the divers mollusks of every ocean, and certain mussels of the watercourses of the north. Lastly, several specimens of inestimable value, which had been gathered from the rarest pentadins. Some of these pearls were larger than a pigeon's egg, and were worth as much, and more than that which the traveler Tavernier sold to the Shah of Persia for 3 millions, and surpassed the one in possession of the Imam of Muscat, which I had believed to be unrivaled in the world. Therefore, to estimate the value of this collection was simply impossible. Captain Nemo must have expended millions in the acquirement of these various specimens, and I was thinking what source he could have drawn from to have been able thus to gratify his fancy for collecting when I was interrupted by these words. Excuse me. When I was interrupted by these words. Why am I losing? You are examining my shells, Professor? Yes, I'm examining your shells, Captain. Yes, Captain, I am examining your shells. Cool. What the hell happened here? Oh, Hi, I'm back. I don't understand why I dropped, but apparently I dropped. Cool, great, awesome. That's fantastic. Alrighty. So, you are examining my shells, Professor. Unquestionably, they must be interesting to a naturalist. But for me, they have a far greater charm. For I have collected them all with my own hand, and there is not a sea on the face of the globe which has escaped my researches. I can understand, Captain, the delight of wandering about in the midst of such riches. You are one of those who have collected their treasures themselves. No museum in Europe possesses such a collection of the produce of the ocean. But if I exhaust all of my admiration upon it, I shall have none left for the vessel which carries it. I do not wish to pry into your secrets, but I must confess that this Nautilus, with the motive power which is confined in it, the contrivances which enable it to be worked, the powerful agent which propels it, all excite my curiosity to the highest pitch. I see suspended on the walls of this room instruments of whose use I am ignorant. You will find these same instruments in my own room, Professor. I shall have much pleasure in explaining their use to you, but first come and inspect the cabin which is set apart for your own use. You must see how you will be accommodated on board the Nautilus. I followed Captain Nemo, who, by one of the doors opening from each panel of the drawing room, regained the waist. He conducted me towards the bow, and there I found not a cabin, but an elegant room, with a bed dressing table, and several other pieces of furniture. Hi everyone, welcome back to the stream. We're about to end it, because I don't know why all of a sudden my stream decided to drop out with enough time for this to not work. But okay. He conducted me toward the bow, and there I found not a cabin, but an elegant room with a bed, dressing table, and several other pieces of furniture. I could only thank my host. Your room adjoins mine, said he, opening a door, and mine opens into the drawing room that we have just quitted. Get it? Get it, dudes? I entered the captain's room. It has a severe, almost a monkish aspect. A small iron bedstead, a table, some articles for the toilet, the whole lighted by a skylight. No comforts, the strictest necessities only. Captain Nemo pointed to a seat. Be so good as to sit down, he said. I seated myself, and he began thus. And with that, until such a later time, I will bid you all good night. Sleep tight. Don't let any of your proverbial bugs bite. And I will see all of y'all next Tuesday. Thank you all so much for hanging out, listening to my music, and getting a bedtime story read, 20,000 Leagues of the Sea. We will pick this up at chapter 11 at a future date. Stay tuned to my Twitter, twitter.com/JohnnyNero, spelled the same way as my Twitch avatar. And hey, if you like what you're seeing and you'd like to support me, like to get some access to music and maybe some early videos, head over to patreon.com/JohnnyNero and subscribe to me there. Or just follow me here. That way you know when I'm going to go on stream. I mean, we're so close to hitting affiliate. I just need to get enough people watching me for enough amount of time to hit the affiliate status on Twitch. That's what we need to do. And finally, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Aisha, for being awesome subscribers. Please go join them at patreon.com/JohnnyNero. While I've been talking here, I probably should have been looking for someone to raid. Who can we raid? Who is available? Okay, is Jelly legit still on? Jelly is not legit still. But you know what? We're gonna go ahead and raid Sleepy. What is she doing? What is she doing tonight? She's doing an ad. She is more than likely doing some sort of Sims content, so... Alright, come on, ad. Finish up. So anyway, as I was saying, y'all have a good night. We're gonna hang out here, we're gonna go raid Sleepy. And if not, sweet dreams. May you wake up energized for the next day. She is away. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go Ultra Fox. You know what? We're gonna raid Sleepy. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start that raid. See where we're going to go with that. But y'all, thank you so much. I am definitely back here next Tuesday. Stay tuned to my Twitter or follow here or any of my other social media stuff to figure out when I'm going to be back here. But we're going to go hit up Sleepy. Y'all take care of yourselves. You have a good night. And I'll see you. Bye, friends. Those of you who are on YouTube and on Facebook. I'm just double checking to make sure that this is gonna work the correct way that I want it to. Is she there? Or is this what's happening?
Eller? Oh my god! Hi, Johnny and friends. How are you?